In the next hour, we are going to try and find out what is a UFO. We will ask, what are those strange lights in the sky? Are they aliens? Are they ships? Or are they something unexplainable? We will put these questions to some of the UK's best known ufologists, paranormal investigators and skywatchers. First, we journey north to Blackpool as we put these questions to David Boyle, curator of the Exhibition of the Universe, an exhibition that claims to show the truth and unveil knowledge which has been hidden from us by those who wish to keep control over the masses.
UFO, unidentified flying object. That's anything to a level of higher consciousness that's in the skies that's not explained by our standard physics that we believe of the level of advancement or evolution in our technical capabilities we've reached. What we're told by our governments and our secret societies and of course the undercover governments and black projects of what we've actually got is about 30 years behind reality. They only tell us what they want us or need to let us know. The arrival, of course, of the stealth bombers and fighters in the Gulf War from nowhere shows you how more advanced they were, because they, of course, didn't take a day to develop and evolve. So what we told in the UFO aspect, UFO stands for unidentified flying object. There's also underwater flying objects as well, which of course many naval aspects have told us about. So of course it's just a technology of a physical reality that we are observed and sense with our senses, moving through the skies and moving through the oceans. And of course UFOs do exist. There are millions and millions and millions of people who have seen them, who have witnessed them, who have taken after them. And of course our governments lie to us because of course they don't want us to know the truth, because it comes back to the same comment that knowledge is power, power is control. The people in charge of us don't wish us to have the same knowledge as them because of course then they wouldn't be in control of us.
So with that in mind, we must ask ourselves, behind every UFO is there intelligent life? A question we put to David Hadrian, investigator with the Birmingham UFO Group.
Right, I've looked into investigations mostly from around the Birmingham area, covered at least 30 so far, and I usually drive out to meet up with the witness and talk them through it in detail, and then I'll generally write a report which will go on the BUFOG website. And the investigations I've covered, most of them have been quite authentic. We've had a few that we've solved, but the majority of them still remain unsolved to this day. A couple have turned out to be solar airships or Chinese lanterns. We're getting quite a few sightings which have turned out to be those. But there's also quite a few of my sightings have been genuine sightings of unexplained craft or things that look like craft performing manoeuvres and have various lighting and size that wouldn't associate with a conventional aircraft. Yeah, I'm currently looking to a very big case down in Bletchley, that's just south of Milton Keynes, and it's a sighting that occurred on December 30th last year, and a man and his 3 sons saw various UFOs. There's also a potential UFO landing site which we've looked into. We've currently sent off samples to Italy to get those checked out. And also there's a lot of aspects of the case that seem to show that the man and maybe others of his family have been abducted. There's a 90 minutes missing time which is unaccounted for. So it's a very big and very interesting case. And hopefully in a couple of weeks the man's going to go for a regression so we can see if anything that he can't currently remember comes out through that. With the incident that occurred in Bletchley at the end of last year, I did mention that there was a potential landing site of a UFO. What's gone on there is on the night where the various unusual lights were sighted in the field, the main witness in the event went back the following day and found some unusual markings at the side of one of the farmers' fields, and he believes this is a location where he'd seen the lights. There's a lot of churned up ground. There's various rocks that look like they've been split right across by pressure. And also the vegetation right next to the side appears like it's been pressed down, and there's a possibility that it's genuine. I've talked to the landowner down at Bletchley, and he's informed me that it's not irrigation, it's not digging that's gone on in the area, and definitely not farm machinery. The field hasn't actually been ploughed since last July, so it does seem to suggest that it might be a genuine sight.
So, with UFO sightings on the increase, we turn to David Sadler, member of the Unknown Phenomena Investigation Association. UPIA holds regular skywatching nights to see what they can see in the night sky. Their equipment ranges from cameras and binoculars to telescopes worth thousands of pounds.
My name's Dave Sadler. I'm from the Unknown Phenomena Investigation Association. I'm the coordinator for the team. We were established back in 1998 to have a look at all the odd things that were occurring and being reported throughout the northwest of the UK. UFOs, big cats, ghosts, paranormal in general, supernatural, all manner of strange and wonderful things. Ufology is quite a large subject. It's quite diverse. There's a lot of things in it, the history of ufology. People report things on a constant level. They're always in the newspapers. Main reports, what people usually see in The Sun and other newspapers, are generally able to be explained away. Satellites, birds, planets, aircraft, all manner of things that can point towards what something actually is, but people don't seem to realise that. So the UPA hold skywatches, both to teach people about the night sky and also to be able to identify different type of lights in the night sky as aircraft, as stars, as satellites, etc, etc. On one skywatch, there's not been much we haven't been able to explain, but on one event that did take place, and we actually have VHS footage of it. We were at a place called Ashurst Beacon in Skelmersdale, looking towards Winter Hill, which is a scene of quite a lot of UFO activity reportedly in the past. And we've got a ball of light which emanates from the ground, appears in the sky for about 2 or 3 seconds, and then diminishes almost as soon as began. It's a beautiful piece of footage. There's a possibility it could have been a flare, but it just doesn't have the same necessary effect as a flare, so it could have been what some people class as an earth light. Again, something that science haven't proven to actually take place, but it's a very interesting piece of footage anyway. Tonight's Skywatch is basically down to people learning about the night sky. We do have several events that we can predict taking place in the night sky, being satellites and such like. And one of them very in particular that very interests us is an iridium flare. The iridium is a type of satellite, and it's got a mirror system, and the mirror system, when it reaches a certain pinnacle, a certain arc of the sky, it causes a glare, and we're going to be looking forward to seeing one, hopefully, if everything stays clear, at about 21:41 this evening. So that's going to be the main thing, but on top of that, we're going to see different types of bird flying over, we're going to see aircraft flying over, and obviously there's going to be a number of other satellites which we can predict the time for that and watch them as they come as well. As well as that, we've got several telescopes. We've got members of a well-known astronomical society here, members of the UPIA, who have some fantastic pieces of equipment which we're going to be looking through this evening, astronomy-wise. And then people get to see astronomy a little bit better as it is the International Year of Astronomy.
Now that we have established that not all UFO sightings are aliens, we turn to paranormal investigator Malcolm Robinson, founder of Strange Phenomena Investigations, as he gives us his insights and experiences with UFOs.
Well, I started off very, very sceptically. I was always an avid skeptic on things relating to ghosts, poltergeists, UFOs. I honestly felt that there were no validity in these subjects at all. And as I grew up, I started to read a whole range of different books. Initially, the Pan Book of Ghost Stories, which was fictional books. And then I progressed onto books that claimed to be books on true UFO reports, true ghost stories, etc. And I still didn't believe that there were any truth in these matters. And it was at this point that I set out on a one-man crusade, if you like, to try and find out if indeed there were any truth in these matters. And I've been doing so ever since. I've seen, because I put myself in the ballpark, because obviously we go to locations where there's a higher concentration of UFO reports than anywhere else, then I can safely say, yes, I have. However, one of the very, very early reports or sightings that I've had of a UFO occurred when I guess I was around about 9 years of age. I was playing football in my local school playing field, and it was a lovely, lovely summer's day. And I looked up into the sky, and there was this disc-shaped object hovering, motionless in the sky, in a lovely, lovely clear blue sky, a rarity in Scotland, but we do have them. Lovely sky, And I was sitting there, and I remember, well, that's strange. I've never seen the likes of this in my life before. And we looked at it for a guess around about 5 or 6 minutes, and then it just completely disappeared. It just completely disappeared and was gone. It didn't go up, it didn't go down, didn't go sideways, it was gone. Years later, I was doing some research about Loch Ness. I was interviewing many people around the loch about the claims to see Nessie. And we were sitting at a campfire in a place called Invermorriston Camp and Caravan Site. And it was a lovely night. I was sitting with German people, French people, sitting around a campfire at the shores of Loch Ness. Lovely starry sky. And then suddenly, a lady shouted out, "Hey, what's that?" And I turned round and I looked, and you could see the silhouette of the hills at Loch Ness, and above it was this orange-shaped object just bobbing up and down, moving up and down. Then it stopped, and then it just shot off into the sky and was gone in seconds. Now, as far as I'm aware, no aircraft or that we know can do this manoeuvre. It was very, very bizarre. I founded SPI, Strange Phenomena Investigations, back in 1979, and it was on the back of one of Scotland's most bizarre UFO incidents. And what happened was that forestry worker Robert Taylor was employed by Livingston Development Corporation. Now, Livingston is a small town, a growing town at that time, in central Scotland. And this gentleman's job was to ensure that no cattle, no sheep strayed into these woods and got lost. That was his job, to make sure that no cattle got lost in the woods. It was a job that he had done day in, day out. On the morning of November the 9th, 1979, Robert Taylor was catapulted into the Twilight Zone, into an environment that he couldn't possibly imagine. What happened was, he got in his truck, he went up to the woods, parked his truck, he had his dog, an Irish red setter dog called Lara, running beside him, walking along this forestry path, and then the path came into a clearing in the woods. And he stood, and he saw this large dome-shaped object floating in this clearing and went, "Oh my God, what's this?" He knew that this wasn't a helicopter, an aircraft. He went, "Oh my God, this is a walk that I'd done every morning." And then suddenly this thing's there. It was solid, then it disappeared, then it was solid, and he could see the young trees behind it. His dog was going crazy, it was barking, and then suddenly, what resembled 2 Second World War sea mines. Maybe your older viewers may remember in the North Atlantic, these circular balls with spikes sticking off them. It looked like that. 2 of them dropped down from this object and started to roll across the grass towards him, and then they stopped. And then they projected these rod-like projections and pulled him forcibly towards this larger object. At this point, he lost consciousness. But before he did, he remembers a horrible burning smell, like burning brake linings all over the area. And he also became aware of a swishing sound, as if you had a big cane and you were swishing it in the air. And at this point, he lost consciousness. When he regained consciousness, the larger object was gone, the smaller objects were gone, and there were all these marks in the grass, over 40 holes and triangular indentations in the grass. And he went back to his home in Deans, where he lived near Livingston. When his wife saw him, she couldn't believe the state. His clothes were all soiled. And his boss, Malcolm Drummond, became involved with this, and also the local police. The local police fenced off the area, and they treated it as an assault by person or persons unknown. I became involved in the case, as did a gentleman by the name of Stuart Campbell from Edinburgh. And to this day, this case stands the test of time. Now, I actually have, would you believe, the trousers that Robert Taylor wore on that eventful morning of November the 9th, 1979. And as you can see here on one of the legs, this is one of the tears. This is one of the tears made by, we don't know, by one of these small objects that grabbed him. There's a similar tear on the other side of the trousers there. And it's amazing to have these trousers in our possession, simply because not only do we have the testimony of a very, very, very sincere gentleman, a man who, he had no interest in UFOs. He's just a normal man who just found himself in this strange environment. Suddenly he was propelled into this twilight zone of insaneness. And it's one of these cases that is very, very bizarre, and it was on the back of that case in 1979 that I founded Strange Phenomena Investigations. And when we look at UFOs, we look at not only witness testimony, we also look at photographs. And I'll very, very briefly tell you about two fantastic photographic pieces that we have in Scotland. The first one occurred in 1991 near Larbert in Stirlingshire, and it also occurred near the Grangemouth petrochemical plant. Now, the Grangemouth petrochemical plant is a massive big area where burning gas flares, etc., burn off into the night sky, and all these pipes and stuff. Now, these two men were taking photographs at night of this wonderful site, illuminated by flares, etc. They're setting up the camera, and then they became aware of this object coming from the Ochil Hills, which is about 4 or 5 miles further along in their distance. As this object became towards their direction, it stopped. It was only about 200 feet above their heads, and they're going, "What's this? This isn't a helicopter or an aircraft of any description." And the gentleman had to bend over backwards and take a photograph of this object. And what you're looking at just now is the underside of that object. Now, the second case that I'd like to tell you about happened in 1994 at Craiglusker Reservoir, and that is near Dunfermline in Fife. This gentleman went out with his camera to take some photographs of this lovely reservoir, which he was going to paint from at a later date. As he was there, early in the morning, he became aware of a humming noise, this buzzing sound that was all over the area. I went, "Well, what's that? What's that noise?" Initially, I thought it was perhaps the electricity pylons, because when you stand underneath these electricity pylons, they resonate, they create a buzz. And he went, "Was it that? Is that the noise?" And then he turned round and he saw this disc-shaped object hovering in the sky. My God, what's going on here? Now, he knew, like most people in these close proximity sightings, they know that it's not an aircraft or a helicopter. He had his camera round his body, and he couldn't take a photograph. It was something was stopping him from taking a photograph. It was like he was encased in one of those old Victorian bell jars where they used to have these flowers, etc. All the sounds just diminished. He couldn't hear the sounds of the traffic coming from the nearby road. He couldn't hear the bird song or anything along those lines. He just didn't know what was going on. And then finally he managed to snap out of that, and he took 2 photographs of the object as it departed. Now, he submitted these photographs to the Scottish Daily Record newspaper, the biggest selling newspaper in Scotland. And I spoke to the chap who received those photographs. He says, "Malcolm, we get loads of these type of photographs, and 10 out of 10 of them are just not rubbish, absolute rubbish." He says, "But this one, this is strange. I can't seem to understand where this is going with this one. It looks real. We've checked the negatives. Everything looks real." We submitted, that is SPI, our society, submitted these negatives and photographs for testing in America. They came back with the conclusion that this object is indeed in excess of 30 feet. It's not a clay pigeon plate, it's not a hubcap of a car or anything along these lines. We don't know what it is, but it's 30 feet in circumference, and to this day, it's one of these classic photographs of UFO activity in Scotland.
With UFO cases seemingly on the increase, we go back to UPIA and the resident ufologist of the group, Steve Meara.
I've also investigated about 16 alleged UFO landing sites where there is physical traces of effects to the ground, such as the acidity in the soil changing, plant life actually dying, or being slowed down in growth. It also ties in with many other things, the UFO sightings, the extraordinary aircraft which the military are flying around. Exotic is probably a better word. They don't tend to be flying around about civil places, such as airports and things, but however, you do get reported incidents occasionally, such as the near-air miss in 1995 near Manchester International Airport, which was another one which I investigated. We have probably around about 80% are rationalised UFO experiences. About 20% of them we don't find an explanation, and they usually end up shelved until we do get a conclusion. You can well imagine that a lot of them don't reach a conclusion nowadays. Most of them could be experimental. There's a possibility. Why fly them over public areas is beyond me. But then there are characteristics of the UFO phenomenon which is beyond which we believe to be built by us, such as those which are associated to aircraft, military aircraft being scrambled after them, those which have allegedly accompanied civil aviation flights right near to the airports, and those, of course, which are associated with missing time events, people being allegedly taken on board aircraft and taken away, claim to have different types of examinations done, medical examinations. There are lots and lots of different things to the UFO phenomena. Somebody will actually even tie in the crop circle phenomena, where we have actually never found any evidence to say that crop circles and UFOs are actually connected. Most of the evidence points to it not being connected whatsoever. 99.9% of crop circle phenomena is usually hoaxed. There's about 0.1% of them which aren't, which is a traditional phenomenon which dates back usually, well, we found evidence from the 1100s, known as the Mowing Devil incidents. And again, they were simply just crop circles, no special patterns, just pressed into the ground. It was around about 1980, Farmer John Skull was reported to the media in the press around about 1980 of a large 60, I think it was around about 60-metre circle in his field. Well, the unfortunate thing is the people that came to investigate that were ufologists and claimed straight away that was probably a UFO landing site. Hence, UFOs have always been associated with crop circles. However, we do have balls of light that are seen in crop circles, but we do believe there tend to be more probably electromagnetic energy, some type of earth lights which are associated to the areas, just simply that there's a crop there at the time. A lot of work has been done into the earth light phenomena by Paul Davro, who's associated with my organisation, and there's a new and growing subject. We could say there are a lot of natural earth phenomena that can be taking place which can be easily misidentified, but UFOs in general, we get about maybe 2 or 3 reports per week. They're still coming in. We believe that the UFO phenomenon doesn't subside, just the reporting of them does. And the reporting is increased due to the media, really, such as like when the X-Files was on, we had a huge increase in sightings. Just as after Close Encounters of the Third Kind was released in 1979, we had a huge increase in sightings. It's media-driven. The more people that are interested in a subject suddenly decide to report. So that's how you can end up with small little UFO flaps in certain areas and completely nothing in another. But there are definitely some trace cases where we say, yeah, there's definitely something unusual taking place, so therefore it's worthy of investigating. So ufology in general is still a subject which is looked upon quite seriously now. When I got into the subject of UFO investigating, it was decided to be a very nuts and bolts phenomena. But as time's gone on, it tends to be more, well, we've got psychological coming in, and we've also got you could say the psychic ramifications of UFO experiences, where sometimes the scene is maybe apparitional and they don't pick up on radar and those sorts of cases. So UFO phenomena covers so many different things. We've got the physical, you've got the non-physical, and we cover a lot. We investigate all sorts of things like that.
Now that we know that UFOs are being reported all the time, how come the subject is not taken more seriously? We asked our experts why people are not coming forward about UFOs.
When I lived in Scotland, I was involved with a mass of UFO sightings occurring above the small Scottish town of Bonnybridge in Stirlingshire. Now, Bonnybridge in UFO speak is known as a hotspot, or a window area, where more UFOs have been seen than anywhere else in the world. You have it in Puerto Rico, you have it in a whole range of different places all over the world. Now, I became involved with these sightings, and I was working alongside a local councillor, a chap called Billy Buchanan. Now, Councillor Buchanan was elected to serve his constituents. He was elected to serve the people of Bonnybridge and Stirlingshire, be it a broken fence, be it a broken drain pipe coming from somebody's home. And then suddenly, he was getting these concerns from people saying, look, we've seen strange things in the sky. What are you going to do about it? Now, that is not something that any local elected government body guy is going to get that on a daily basis. Like I say, he was elected to serve the people. So he looked into these claims and he went, you know what? There is something going on here. These are not aircraft. These are not helicopters. I became involved and I worked extensively with Councillor Buchanan, and we soon realised that there was something very bizarre ongoing above the Stirlingshire skies. So much so that we then petitioned the then Prime Minister, John Major. We asked John Major to come to Scotland and look at all of our files and spend a few nights in Scotland and see for himself what is going on. What we got back from Downing Street was the typical letter. As these objects do not constitute a threat to the defence of the United Kingdom, the British government will not seek to open any UFO government inquiry. Now, we were very annoyed at that statement, simply because we're not speaking about things way up in the sky. We're speaking at things that you could throw a stone at. Seriously, they were so close, these objects, you could have thrown a stone at. When Tony Blair was elected to Prime Minister, we asked Tony Blair to come to Scotland. Again, the same tired old statement was, there's no threat there, so we're not going to get involved. And sadly, that's been the case. That the government, I do believe that the British government know more than they're letting on, absolutely. What we have to understand, that these reports coming from Bonnybridge, and not just Bonnybridge, from all over the world, are being seen by all types of people. From children, from middle-aged people, from pensioners, from pillars of the community. Police officers, doctors, lawyers, pilots, and by golly, there are a heck of a lot of UFO sightings seen by pilots. But the thing is, what we have to remember is that there's a fear factor. A lot of people are frightened to come forward with their UFO sighting because of ridicule, because of the press ridicule in the newspapers or on TV. That's a sad, sad thing, because there are so many sightings all over the world. It's like a jigsaw. Pieces from Puerto Rico, from Australia, from Canada. And what we're trying to do is get all these people to put their hands up and say, come forward. Tell us what you've seen, and we'll piece this jigsaw together and find out exactly what's going on here. Because at the end of the day, like I always say, there is something going on. But sadly, yeah, the fear factor, the ridicule factor is always there. And who knows? Maybe there's some absolutely classic cases of close proximity, UFO sightings and alien abductions that we'll never know about. We'll never know about, simply because we don't know. I don't want to come forward, and that's a sad thing.
Some of the witnesses of UFOs are very high profile, such as police, pilots, and people in the military. But a lot of the time, they're told not to release this information after they've reported the sighting. And this is part of the worldwide cover-up that's certainly in effect. A few years ago, I saw at one of the conferences a jumbo jet pilot, and he'd witnessed a massive silver disc fly straight past his aircraft. Unfortunately, when he decided to talk about it, he actually lost his job because of that. So because of this, and also the fact that there might be ridicule surrounding what they come out with, a lot of people decide to keep their sightings to themselves, and they never see the light of day with the public.
We've had lots of different varieties of people report things to us in the past regarding UFOs. Doctors have reported things to us. Airline pilots have reported things in the media. People of substance, people who you would probably say they've got no reason to lie, they've got no reason to make this up. These are professional people and we can believe them. But at the same time, the other people, we've got to believe them too. The people, the manual workers, people who do normal day jobs, people who don't work are still reporting UFO experiences, and each and every one of them are still given the same credence by both the UPIA and groups not dissimilar to ourselves nationwide. we've had reports of alien abductions by people who, very professional people. Unfortunately, I can't discuss them, obviously, because they don't want to be talked about, whatnot. But, you know, there's a lot of people out there who are experiencing the whole range of UFO activity, and groups like the UPIA are available for them to discuss things with. Even if they feel that they can't, they think that they'll be ridiculed, they won't. We are there to take account of what they can report and try and find out a little bit more and try and help them if we can.
With pilots reluctant to come forward, we were lucky enough to come across David Richardson.
In the 1980s, I worked for a small air charter company, and I was an engineer and also training to be a pilot at the same time. On this one particular evening, we had a contract. We used to operate out of East Midlands in a PA-23 250 Piper Aztec type aircraft, which is a six-seater twin piston engined aircraft. On this particular evening, we were operating out of East Midlands Airport to Dublin Airport on a freight run, and we left East Midlands Airport, and the routing took us over Stoke-on-Trent up to Wallasey on the airway, and then from Wallasey out to Dublin. Now, since all this has come to light, I believe that Stoke-on-Trent is quite a hot spot, and on this particular evening, which is a normal flight, quite a routine flight, we saw absolutely nothing. We're in cloud most of the time at 8,000 feet, and then we went up to 10,000 feet because we're an unpressurised aircraft. So on this particular evening, nothing really happened out of the ordinary. It was just routine. But when we got back into the office, we packed the aircraft away like we used to do every night, and I went home. And when I came back into the office at Manchester Airport in the morning, I was greeted with our receptionist saying, "Oh, could you make a telephone call to this Army personnel officer? He needs to speak to you urgently." He'd been on the phone 3 times that morning already. This was late morning, obviously, because we'd had a night flight. So I rang this Army personnel officer that had been on the phone 3 times and been quite insistent with the secretary. And the conversation went, your aircraft was in the vicinity of Stoke-on-Trent. We got a lot of reported sightings of an unidentified flying object. Now, at the particular time that all these sightings were reported, yes, we were in the area, but we didn't see anything. As I said, we were in cloud. So the telephone conversation continued on with him, and he said to me, he asked about the aircraft lights, namely the strobe lights on the wingtips. It's a little high-intensity white light that flashes on the wingtips. Now, unfortunately, our aircraft doesn't have these. We just had nav lights on, navigation in a green, and on the tail we had what's called a rotating beacon. It's similar to a police, the old rotating police thing, but only in red. And so I explained that to him. And he said, and then the conversation went, well, did you have a strobe on the... And I said, no, it's just a rotating beacon. It's quite a simple mirrored device that goes round and just flashes a red light off the tail with green strobe lights. And the conversation went, he insisted, basically, he put it down to, right, well, I'm going to put this occurrence down to, it was your aircraft with your strobe lights on. And I said, well, our aircraft didn't have strobe lights. And he actually was very insistent. And he said, yes, it did. And if anybody asks, that's what you tell them. But as I say, this was in the 1980s. It will be in an occurrence report somewhere, and it will have been recorded, but where it is, anybody's guess is nowadays. In my personal opinion, this Army guy was using us as an excuse. So if anybody had witnessed, or well, he told me that they'd witnessed an unidentified flying object, then we were used as the excuse without a shadow of a doubt.
With eyewitnesses stating that there is a government cover-up, it goes with what our experts have said.
Some of the witnesses of UFOs are very high profile, such as police, pilots, and people in the military. But a lot of the time, they're told not to release this information after they've reported the sighting. And this is part of the worldwide cover-up that's certainly in effect.
And of course, UFOs do exist. There are millions and millions and millions of people who have seen them, who have witnessed them, who have taken after them. And of course, our governments lie to us because, of course, they don't want us to know the truth. Because it comes back to the same comment, that knowledge is power, power is control. The people in charge of us don't wish us to have the same knowledge as them because, of course, then they wouldn't be in control of us.
But one in particular took place in 1998 in Bebington on the Wirral, when somebody asked me to point out where the Orion's belt was, and when I looked up there was a black triangular shape in the night sky which drifted off in an odd angle and then sped up quite dramatically.
Well, I've stopped counting the number of UFOs I've seen. On many, many occasions, along with many, many witnesses, I've seen so many that can't possibly fit into the technology that we're given away as reality.
I've been looking up at the stars all my life. Serious astronomy I've probably been doing 30, 35 years, with a range of equipment from a cheap telescope to what I've got now, which has got to be £3,000 or £4,000 worth of equipment. Most of what I've seen that is unexplained, I cannot and will not put down as aliens. It's the occasional flash, the occasional what that looks like a strange plane type of thing. You spend enough time looking up the sky, you will see things that you don't know what they are. And you can't class them as aliens, they're just unidentified.
So, with a lot of things in the sky and having rational explanations behind them, such as planes, planets and satellites, we ask our experts what their own personal experiences are with UFOs.
Myself, experiencing ufology has been a bit odd. There's been things I've witnessed in the sky which, in the past when I was young, it's been like, oh, that's a little bit odd. And that's the time when I was back at school, and obviously I've not been able to remember facts and dates about that to be able to look into it. But one in particular took place in 1998 in Bebington on the Wirral, when somebody asked me to point out where the Orion's belt was, and when I looked up there was a black triangular shape in the night sky which drifted off in an odd angle and then sped up quite dramatically. Obviously we're able to explain that, why things speed up now, or will look like they're speeding up. But in effect at the time it was to me it was a UFO. But I believe nowadays it would be an experimental aircraft, but that was probably the most interesting thing I've seen in the night sky.
Yeah, so far, despite being a believer in UFOs and aliens for many years, I haven't yet actually seen one myself. Not something I could definitely say was unexplained. So I'll keep looking, and hopefully through my investigations that day may come. Yeah, the reason why I'm a complete believer is just the sheer amount of evidence that I've looked into over the years. I've been to many conferences and read many books on the subject, and there's an astronomical amount of evidence to prove that this is really going on. You've got all the hundreds and hundreds of videos, photographs, you've got radar sightings, sightings by key and very credible witnesses, and documents that the government have got that are covered up and prove that they're trying to keep some of that back from the public.
Many people ask me, have I seen a UFO or had any communication with extraterrestrials? Well, I've stopped counting the number of UFOs I've seen. On many, many occasions, along with many, many witnesses, I've seen so many that can't possibly fit into the technology that we're given away as reality. Several of which I know move at such speeds and trajectories and so quick and so fast that there are even now modern technology, or the technology hidden by our governments, couldn't possibly create what's been happening.
I've seen a number of UFOs, unidentified flying objects. Let's just make that clear. UFOs are nothing more than an unidentified flying object. Doesn't mean that they're little grey men flying around. I also don't believe in terms of UFO experts. I think the only experts are the ones that fly them. But I have seen a number of them. I saw about 5 or 6 last year, which I can't readily identify. Of course, there could be something military in origin, with a technology that was beyond our recognition. It's a more feasible approach to think of that, as opposed to extraterrestrial, of course. But then there are some things that I just can't readily identify, and some of those were daytime and nighttime. Last April, a year ago, pretty much around about this week, I saw one from my back garden, which was round, travelling across the sky around about 12:10 in the afternoon. It was clear. It was completely round, spherical, and it lit up, self-illuminous. And then it switched back again, so it was on and off as it traversed across the sky. I've also seen the flying triangle, which has no sound whatsoever, which is very unusual. Apex light in each corner, travelling slowly over my house, heading northwards, and that was around about 3 years ago in an October evening. We're only a stone way from Manchester International Airport as well, so that's also interesting. And I've seen the odd things in the sky where things flash across and at ridiculous speeds and change direction. The investigation notes that we have on satellites say that some blink due to thermal rolls. Some might consist of a couple, 2, 3 lights, and some might even be slightly coloured. But never you will normally change direction and change velocity, and that is something that we see as not being recognised or identified as a satellite. So there's a lot of those things I've actually seen over the years. So I think it's just a matter of being in the right place at the right time and keep looking up, because I think it does increase your chances. I don't think you have to go to any special location so you can just sit in your back garden on a clear night and see some strange things just as I have. I think it's just a matter of looking up on a more regular basis.
So, is our government keeping UFO secrets from us? What are the UFOs? Are they little green men, or are they some form of military craft? The fact of the matter is, if you do see a UFO in the sky, there are a number of people you can go to report it. UPIA, SPI, BUFOG, or any number of other groups. But try and think of a rational explanation first, and don't just put it down to aliens. And as Steve Mear just said,
I think it's just a matter of being in the right place at the right time and keep looking up, because I think it does increase your chances. I don't think you have to go to any special location so you can just sit in your back garden on a clear night and see some strange things just as I have. I think it's just a matter of looking up on a more regular basis.
Have I met ETs? Yes. I've actually met one face to face, in this dimension, as solid as you and I, in the levels.
We have received reports of alien abductees, from alien abductees in the past, and this is a very, very touchy area. I mean, you could go down into the realms of psychiatry, psychology, but these people obviously are convinced of what takes place.
As the car was directly underneath this object emitted like a heavy silver shimmering snowflakes. Like heavy silver snowflakes, it descended and hit the car. As soon as this effect hit the car, both men were catapulted into inky and total blackness.